In order to demonstrate how to soak paper for the watercolor painting, I have created this little puppet show. You will need a basin of water filled about 2 or 3 inches with water, cold water. It can be either a separate plastic basin or the sink in your classroom that has a plug in it, and either this basin or the sink both should be large enough to accommodate the size of the paper that you're going to be using. You also need an extra painting board and the number of sheets of paper that you will use for your class plus 1 for yourself. The first thing that you will do is you will submerge each one of the pieces of paper underneath the water. It is important that each page goes completely under the water separately so that both surfaces of the paper come in contact with the cold water. If you place 2 pieces of paper in the water together, the space in between them captures air, and so the water will not get inside and will not then dampen both sides of the paper equally. So you put them in one at a time, making sure that they're completely submerged before you put the next piece in. This is a great activity for one of your painting helpers, making sure that they count as they go so that all of the pages are accounted for. Once all the pieces are submerged under the water, I then take all of the papers and I flip them over so that the first paper that I put in is the first paper to come out. Then I let them sit for 5 minutes. Painting paper is made out of several different fibers. Depending on the quality of the paper that you purchase, it could be made out of wood pulp or a combination of wood pulp and cotton fiber or fully 100% cotton fiber. In order to create the smooth surface of the paper, paper manufacturers coat the paper with a sizing, which is a glue-like substance that when pressed into the paper creates the smooth surface, and the fibers don't get separated very easily. Creates somewhat like a coating so that the paper stays together. Now this coating, if it is under the water for too long, starts to soften and dissolve. If the water is hot, it will dissolve more quickly. If there's a lot of friction, it will also dissolve more quickly. We want to keep it not in the water for too long because after 5 minutes, it starts to dissolve on its own. So after 5 minutes, what I do is I gather all the pieces together into one little pack. And I pull it out of the water and I squeeze them and I let the papers drain. Once all the excess water is dripped off, I take the paper and I put it on the extra drawing board. I then have a towel or a large rag that I have run in the water, gotten it nice and damp. I wring it out and I open it up and lay it on top of the paper. And there the paper will rest. The reason why you need it to rest is that the fibers in the paper all take different amounts of time to absorb the water completely. So there is just enough water sitting in between each of these sheets of paper to complete the softening, dampening process. So the cotton will absorb water more quickly than the wood fibers. And what we want to make sure is that the paper decides to rest. You will have fewer wrinkles if the paper is properly soaked without being soaked too much. Once the paper is in this place, you can take the board with all the wet paper and bring it to the front of the room where you are doing your demonstration. You will remove one piece of paper and place it on your board. You will cover over the paper and you will let it rest. You will do your painting demonstration while the children watch. On their tables, they will all have their painting boards ready. When your demonstration is complete, you will then remove the towel, ask your painting helper to hold the board for you and follow you around the room, and you will take each individual page and place it carefully on the board of each awaiting quiet student. You will make your way around the room, passing out the paper, and while you're passing, the children are using the sponge to remove all of the excess dampness and smooth out all the bubbles. Once all the pages are passed out and the children are waiting and ready, you then stand to say your painting verse, and then the children can begin. In this way, the wet paper is not passed out too soon, that it dries out, and it's not soaking in the water too long where the sizing is softening too much. You will know that you have soaked the paper too long if your finished paintings have a very hazy quality. What that means is that the surface of the sizing has been broken up and that the water and the color have soaked through the sizing layer and into the fibers of the painting, of the paper, creating a very soft look to the painting, and that you want to avoid. Another symptom of having soaked your paper for too long is that the children begin to get pills, little balls of paper when they're painting. The surface of the paper starts to pick up and create these little balls, little white balls that roll around. They're teeny tiny, like pinhead size, but they can get really bad. And what that is that the surface of the paper has softened just too much, and that the sizing has completely been removed. And what the children are beginning to do is pull apart the paper. So if your experience has been that the pilling has happened, or that the paintings become hazy or fuzzy after drying, you know that you're soaking too long. If you find that you still have these problems after the 5 minutes, then you can shorten the time. Shorten it to 2 minutes or 3 minutes and experiment with that, because different papers are made in different ways. And so you want to accomplish your work without having to purchase brand new paper. So you can make adjustments based on the supplies that you have already purchased. By doing this process, by leaving it in the water for only 5 minutes and removing it, placing it on the board to rest, you give the paper enough time to absorb the water, but not too much. So I wish you luck with this process and happy painting.